Don't think because, you're a teenager who may be rolling their eyes and knows it all. Make sure they're aware. Make sure that you're telling your parents, make sure you're telling your friends, people that are in decision-making positions, do something. I think that's part of it, is that sometimes we're always just waiting around for someone else to come save us when we're the ones that can save ourselves.
Welcome to the Verdict Signal podcast, where we feature how top attorneys help people make informed choices, avoid common mistakes, and move forward with confidence. Now, enjoy the show, and here's your host.
Daniel Gao here. I'm the host of Verdict Signal, and today we're expanding our conversations to the expert to protect what people build, their careers, families, and businesses. I have Ashley Upkins, a trailblazer in the legal and energy sectors and the first woman from Tennessee to serve as president of the National Bar Association, the oldest and largest network of African-American attorneys, judges, and legal professionals in the country. She currently serves as head of litigation, investigations, and alternative dispute resolution at Silicon Ranch, the largest independent solar power producer in the U.S., where she guides litigation strategy, regulatory compliance, and commercial dispute resolution in the renewable energy space. Before joining Silicon Ranch, Ashley was the managing partner of the Cochran firm in Nashville, where she led high-stakes civil rights, personal injury, medical malpractice, and wrongful death cases. Known for her strategic legal mind, results-driven leadership, and commitment to justice, Ashley has built a reputation as both a fierce advocate and a compassionate voice for the voiceless. So Ashley, welcome and glad to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, let's start from the very beginning. What first got you interested in the legal field?
So it's one of those classic stories. When I was small, I was watching television, and I learned that Felicia Rashad from The Cosby Show was a lawyer. And I just could not get over how she was fierce, but kind, but graceful, but funny. And I didn't know any lawyers, in real life. And so I really looked up to kind of that image of who she was. She was smart, beautiful, but also very compassionate.
Okay. And so kind of as you went through your legal journey, how did you end up to where you are now, as far as like focusing on litigation, regulatory law? Because before that, when you were in the Cochran firm, you were working on civil rights, personal injury, medical malpractice, wrongful death. So kind of what was the path that kind of led you to that and then to the regulatory space?
Yeah. So I still am a litigator. So, as a true litigator, you litigate any number of topics. And so if, it's all about justice and getting it right. So, in the civil rights space, whether it was a police brutality case or, there was discrimination, workplace discrimination. And I ultimately also got into defective construction cases while I was at Cochran. And that actually feeds well into what I do now. Many of the contracts that we have, if there's a litigation such as, a contractor is not building our sites as they should, or, there's some type of violation or breach, I'm there to litigate on behalf of the company. So, it's different litigate, but, we could litigate over that microphone if you got a, defective, a serial defect of the microphone you're on, Daniel. I'm sure we'll figure out a case around that too. So if you're a true litigator, it doesn't matter.
You can do anything, right?
That's right.
Okay, excellent. Well, I want to dive into some certain topics, particularly some of the latest Supreme Court decisions, particularly because of your background and your knowledge. So I want to get your thoughts on immigration. Supreme Court, as far as some of the decisions on immigration, what are your thoughts on those decisions, why they voted kind of the way they did, and what do you think that's going to mean kind of for the future?
So why do I think they voted the way they did? I think right now we have a very polarized bench. I think that politics have seeped into the decisions that are being made. We're seeing the court turn from prior decisions from a Supreme Court level in ways that we have not seen in the past. And so I think that when you inject money into the judiciary, that's what happens. And so that is that's my take on things. And it's quite unfortunate because we politicize things that quite frankly should not be political. People should have the ability to drink fresh water, to have power in their homes and be warm. We should allow people to feel safe as human beings. And I think we've gotten away from the humanity with a lot of the political gamesmanship that I'm seeing in the recent years, past number of years at this point.
Okay. And that kind of leads me to my next topic is as far as the federal authority. I mean, the Supreme Court is supposed to be there to at least check some of the federal authority or at least push back so that they are their own independent body. But do you feel like a lot of what's been going on, particularly with the Trump administration, it seems like he's trying to push back and just kind of test the limits of what he can get away with? Do you feel like the Supreme Court has done a good job, a fair job, or a bad job of trying to check that those I guess the federal authority and what Trump's been trying to do?
Um, I would say, it's it's a coin toss, if you will. So, for when they get one decision right, where you're like, okay, that makes sense. It's aligned with their prior decisions. Then you'll get something, whether it's gutting the Voting Rights Act, or whether it's not giving asylum, right? The TPS matters. I can't tell you enough how much that I find it disheartening being a lawyer, where you tell people that, while the courts may get it wrong every now and then, the truth is, you go to the courts for justice, you go to the court for fairness. And it's so disheartening when you see situations where it's clearly there's an alignment to a political ideology over the rule of law. And so when you have firms being targeted for representing people that don't align with a current administration's ideology, when you have where you can almost guess what each Supreme Court justice will do because this is typically conservative or this is typically liberal, that's unfortunate, because the Supreme Court of all courts is supposed to be the one that's immune from all of the politics and the gamesmanship. They're supposed to be the ones that stay protected. That's why, right, you have lifetime appointments, and that's not what's happening here. I mean, we see some of the most unethical behavior, is how I would categorize it in my personal opinion, that's gone on, especially when it comes to these financial relationships that are going on with the court. Many lower court judges would be kicked off the bench for having many of these same, financial arrangements and benefits. And so it's quite unfortunate trying to look law students or even clients in their eyes when, we see it going on in our, in our face. And to go back to the point you made about testing the limits is so difficult. And I'm speaking, in my capacity as president of the National Bar Association, and it's really difficult, to inform the public of law in general. And so then when there's all of this hoopla around an executive order, and then there's a little asterisk to like, oh yeah, so that was invalidated. But, but the big, the big hoopla was done around whatever this executive order was. It's so difficult to inform the public, oh yeah, by the way, that was ruled invalid, or, that's not a law. It's so hard to help people differentiate those two. So I really want us to really take a hard look and make some really drastic changes with how we're set up as a country when it comes to our judiciary, the relationships that are permissible even at the Supreme Court level, and certainly the responsibility we have to properly inform the public.
And how do you feel that these decisions being made, I guess we'll call it at the top, at the Supreme Court level, how do you feel that those are going to trickle down or affect, I guess you can call it, the lower courts? Do you think what changes do you think is going to happen? Do you feel like maybe the lower courts are going to loosen up their criteria? Do you think we're going to see kind of more financial arrangements between interested parties and judges? What do you think is going to be kind of the repercussions of what we're seeing at the top trickling down to the bottom?
Great question. That remains to be seen, right? Because it's really layered. So, with federal court judges, maybe, but they still have certain judicial canons. And when you're talking about state court judges, yeah, but again, they have certain judicial canons. And so I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I think that's what's unclear, because the system was never anticipated to have these type of inappropriate financial arrangements. So the honest answer is, I don't know what the future holds for these type of arrangements. I do hope, and I will work toward making sure that we put parameters in place, or at least try to advocate that those parameters be in place, because the checks and balances that were anticipated by our forefathers was truly that balance. And I don't see that balance happening today. It should not be that any one segment of what makes up our government should really override all other portions. It really undermines what the system was made to do.
Okay, so when it comes to voting rights and discrimination, so there was the recent redrawing of the electoral maps, first in Texas, and I believe California did it. Tennessee did it as well. I don't know if there's any other states that are doing this, but it seems like my understanding was that you can do this, or I guess the Supreme Court upheld this because they're not discriminating against race or creed or anything. They're discriminating against political affiliation, which is okay, was my understanding. Is that kind of the correct understanding, or is there kind of more going on behind the scenes there?
So the Louisiana versus Calais decision significantly narrows protections that are relied upon to challenge racial vote dilution under Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. The problem with that is because one of the nation's most important safeguards against schemes to weaken the strength of historically marginalized voters, right? That Section 2 has been a very critical tool to ensuring that there's not manipulation and there's fairness. I think people get caught up again in, harping on, us, them, that they're not just looking at the practicality that I believe most Americans can get behind, which is fairness. And so the case was bigger than Louisiana, as you highlighted, right? Because within, I don't even know if it was 24 hours of that decision, you had states like my own state, Tennessee, Texas, and many others redrawing maps. And so that should tell a person, forget white, black, and all the things. But if this wasn't significant to the outcome of voting, why did so many states quickly start redrawing maps? If it doesn't matter, if it's not a big deal, right? And so the ruling essentially raises the bar for proving discrimination, and it makes it more difficult to challenge district maps and district maps that dilute minority voting power. So in practical terms, it threatens to reduce the opportunity for historically marginalized groups to elect candidates of their choice. And it essentially eroded a lot of the federal protections that were in place for the last decade. And so that goes back to what I was saying earlier about, ways that the Supreme Court has ruled pretty consistently. And you see this change, right? This pulling away from what I would have said out of law school, well-established law. So I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, no, it's good to know. Now, I want to dive a little bit deeper into AI. Now that there's the advent and the rise of AI, how can not just the legal industry, but I guess everyone else around it that is affected by law in some way, how can they adapt to these changes?
Well, so that's part of what us and others, the National Bar is what I mean by us and others are really concerned about, because, there are not sufficient guardrails in place to protect people, companies around all things AI. So you're seeing a huge uptick in AI scams, and we're seeing individuals be victimized in ways that, most people have never even anticipated. And so people need to certainly be aware. They should not panic. Artificial intelligence is an incredible tool, but also that same technology that can be used for good can also be used by criminals.
Okay, so when it comes to these scams, could you give an example of some of these scams? Because I mean, I think everyone's heard of the Nigerian prince. So I've got the $1 billion, but it's stuck in Nigeria, and I need your bank account to be able to put it in there and hold it for a day before I can get it out. So I think people have heard of those ones, but like, if when it comes to AI scams, like what kind of forms do those take?
Great questions. Thanks, Daniel. So traditional scams often had, like you described, the Nigerian prince with the obvious warning signs, poor grammar, strange email addresses, awkward phone calls. The difference with AI, though, now is that AI can produce flawless emails, realistic texts, Criminals no longer need to be experts. And so, again, I say this time and time again, we're moving from an era where seeing was believing to one where verification is believing. And so one of the most frightening, of course, we have the emails, right? They're just more flawless in how they're written, but we're seeing voice cloning. We're also seeing deep fake videos, even when you're on FaceTime. But the voice cloning, I think, is probably one of the most frightening because a criminal only needs a few seconds of someone's voice, and they often can take it from social media or calling the person. You just need a few seconds, and they can create a convincing imitation.
Mm.
And so we've seen it, grandparents scammed, fake CEOs calling the secretary for a wire that has to be done, romance scams. I mean, blackmail, right? Some of the younger folks are being blackmailed with deep fake nudes and things like that. Don't tell anyone. You have to pay me and gift cards or, but it's always urgency. And so we're seeing a lot of that. And unfortunately, we've had some young people that took their lives because they didn't tell anyone and they, found no way out. And grandparents that have, thinking they're helping their grandchild that have just been, their accounts wiped out. So it's really important that we don't think we're immune just based on age group.
Okay. So what are some things people can do to protect themselves? Because I think it's from some of these scams, even before like kind of the old school scams. I think for some of those ones, some of those could be pretty convincing. There's the obvious one where the email is all mistaken, grammar's bad, and from this really weird email. But there's other ones as well that seems like, oh, this was like I remember the like the IRS, you owe back taxes, and if you don't pay this within a day, we're gonna lock you up and garner your wages and all that. So they got kind of more and more clever, but I think people kind of realize, oh, if it's from a fake email or something like that, or a weird number, then just ignore it. It seems like some of these with the deep fakes, particularly like the voice. I did hear about, and that there's just a rumor, but I guess it was true, of parents getting calls from the kids and the kids saying, "Oh, I'm in trouble. I need money," or blah blah blah. So like, how can people protect themselves when they can't tell the difference between the voices?
Sure. So, few things. One, and to go back to your point, the IRS definitely got that one, and then I know there's also the FedEx or UPS when we have a package. We just need you to, those games. But as far as the voice and the deep fakes, first, typically speaking, if you can verify independently. So don't rely on the fact that you see their phone number or texting you or emailing you or calling you. Call that number independently. Now, sometimes, and this could be a real thing. I have a son that's now in college. Hey, my phone's dead or my phone is broken. I've lost my phone. And so how do you know if that person's real? Because you can't call their phone, right? Independently. Create a family safe word, or for organizations, create an organizational word, say for that CEO to accountant relationship. Hey, if I'm not in office and I'm asking you to send a wire, here's our safe word. And it's a code word that only those individuals would know. So for a family safe word, that helps with voice cloning. Don't do something that's easy to guess, because I can look at your dog's name on social media. So don't use your dog's name or, your mother's maiden, because typically now, especially on Facebook, people tag all their family members in a row, right? So you know who to go through. And most importantly, I would say slow down. Typically, criminals want people to panic. And so panic overrides judgment. And so they, I need it now. I need it by tomorrow. I'm in jail. I've been something, right? I'm being detained. And so there's this panic, and then there's usually some request that the money not go through official means. Now, like I said, Cash App, Venmo, Zelle, they're so common peer-to-peer now. But a lot of times criminals always are they use those, right? Those are their favorites sometimes, as well as cryptocurrency and gift cards. Not that any of those ways of paying are bad independently, but they can be exploited. But so can, you send in a wire from your bank account as well. So just making sure that you protect yourself and be cautious in what you post online. I remember when I was litigating and I helped a lot of individual cases, I would win cases just because an individual would post things, that proved my case. So 9 times out of 10, I can usually tell where the person lives by posts that they make, not just maybe that one, but several others. In the background, there's a license plate number. You put your birthday, maybe not the year, but usually I can look that up. And so I don't need to know your mother's maiden name because you have your picture with your mom and you tagged her. I don't want people to be fearful, but we do need to be aware.
Okay. And I want to dive a little deeper into the payment methods. Like I'm trying to figure out what are some of the telltale signs. Like we kind of talked about with before the emails, the kind of telltale sign was really bad grammar or really weird email addresses it was coming from. Um, but with this one, it's okay. Well, payment, you kind of mentioned the cryptocurrency gift cards. That could be like kind of a clear giveaway. Hey, I'm in jail. I need $500 of gift cards. Like, okay, that's kind of a clear giveaway. Or I need $500 of Bitcoin. Um, but when it comes to the payment methods, is there anything that's kind of like a telltale sign? You kind of mentioned with bank wires, which may make sense for like a business, but for kind of like the average person, the average grandparent, the average parent, um, are there any telltale signs of from the payment method? Oh, hey, if they're asking for Bitcoin, if they're asking for gift cards, don't do it. It's probably a scam.
Yeah, so Cash App, Venmo, Zelle, I send money to my son that way all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if suddenly he asked me for a Cash App payment and it's not his normal Cash App, oh, send it to my friend because my phone is lost and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Now we need to, right? Red flags are now up. And so, if they're asking you to pay them in a way, even if you would normally pay that way, that is not something that you usually would do, or it's a different number, red flags should go up. Also, legitimate organizations typically don't demand payment through crypto, Venmo, Cash App. Some smaller groups, like say it's your house cleaner, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Also, when you're talking about certain sums of money, I shared before on another interview I did that there was a question that kind of came up around how successful has the DOJ or FBI been in catching these guys? Because so many times, or the organizations, because many of them are out of the country. There has been some significant cases and litigation around it. There's one where I unknowingly, many years ago in my 20s, was a victim. And what happened is that in Nashville, there's a boom here for our real estate. And so you would pay a deposit to go in and see a property that you either wanted to rent or buy. And they would just give you the door code.
Mm-hmm.
What was enough where it was maybe it's $20, $50, something like that, something that's not outrageous. Maybe it was even $100, but they did not own the property. The scammers didn't own the property, didn't have the code. I think in one scam, it was the right code because they had somebody actually physically in the city that had gotten it from the real estate agent,
Mm-hmm.
but they were not at all associated or even had the power to rent and or sell the properties. And even though $100 didn't sound like a lot in the aggregate, it was a huge scam. They're being prosecuted right now. And so, the first thing people need to do if they feel like they've been a victim, naturally change your passwords, freeze your accounts, all of that. But do contact law enforcement. Don't be embarrassed. Call the police, call the FBI, report it. They have many online options because, many people don't think that there's anything that's going on, but enough people report the same type of behavior. A lot of times, law enforcement, especially FBI, will get on top of it and bring those folks to justice.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, when it comes to guardrails, when it comes to AI, like, is there really anything that can be done from a guardrail standpoint? Because I mean, with the deep fakes, I mean, obviously there's a lot of good application for that, being able to clone voices and things along those lines. Um, or is it more of just well, you need to just educate yourself so that you can protect yourself and not have to rely on any guardrails being put up by the AI companies?
So, yes, to your guardrail should not be, I will say this. Our goal for our organization and many others like us, our goal isn't to regulate AI out of existence, but we need enough guardrails so that innovation can earn and keep people's trust. Right now, you're in a situation where you look online, you don't know if it's AI, if it's not, is it real, is it not? It's really just unchecked right now. And so, whether it's using AI to hire in the healthcare space, legal advice space, AI is supposed to assist human judgment. It's not supposed to replace human judgment. And right now, without us having protections in place, such as, you know, that there be a label if AI is being used, right? There be information around if AI is being used to assist, say, for job decisions or promotions, making sure that businesses are required, if they're going to use AI, that they have security plans in place to keep that, but also from a legislative. Now, we all know that can be very slow. There's a lot of contention right now. We can barely pass the things that we need, but we should not just wait on the government in order to protect ourselves. Many companies should create their own AI governance committees. So having AI policies in place, employee training, that's the quickest way, right? Is that we govern ourselves. We sometimes put too much reliance on the government to fix things that we as consumers can demand and put in place. And
Okay.
so if, a business cannot explain how AI can, how they're able to explain the AI to the consumer or the employee, defend it, audit it, then they shouldn't trust it.
Okay. Now, kind of within that vein, also, I want to talk a little bit about consumer privacy, particularly with AI, because I mean, you talked a little bit about some of the things like when it comes to the scams, as far as doing like deepfake nudes and then blackmailing people. So, I guess what is being done from a regulatory perspective of trying to stop this? I mean, can it be stopped, or do they just have to prosecute the people that's using it and trying to use it for nefarious means? I mean, kind of where's the future of that going?
I think there is a desire from certain individuals or some individuals to put guardrails in place. The National Bar, a few years ago, I was present, met with a number of your senators and House reps at the federal level. That became a political issue.
Mm.
We had people that were represented with us asking for guardrails and having a proposal with us, again, from some of the largest technology companies in the US. They were on board,
Mm.
and it became political of who's in office and who has the majority. Outrageous that, again, just to see that become something that's outrageous, when at the end of the day, these scammers don't care how you vote.
Mm.
They don't. They care about getting your money, your information. But it became, again, a political issue. So right now we don't have practical guardrails in place for consumer privacy. However, with that being said, many times people overlook, even though this is new technology, old laws can apply. So just like if there is, say, a victimization using AI, that's theft, that's fraud, right? There still are consumer protection laws in most states in the country, right? Almost all states in the country. So are you inappropriately sharing private data? Did you give consumers meaningful notice and consent? Did you put the necessary protections in place, such as encrypting, sensitive data or whatever it may be? That's negligence if you didn't. Did you inform consumers of their rights? So a lot of times we have those, they've just not been used in a way with this new technology, but we're starting to see a lot of that happen, because negligence is negligence. It doesn't matter if it's the, old hole on the property and someone falls in case, or if it's using the way that someone is using AI in a way that is highly irresponsible and not informing consumers of the risk. So
Okay.
same old laws, new technology.
Okay. So I guess to the onus of responsibility, if there's negligence, it would be on, let's say, the AI company. But otherwise, if there was, I guess, maybe not consent, but like understanding, then it's going to be on the person who's using it for nefarious means. Is that kind of the separation between the two, or is it slightly different than that?
So different. So we're not talking about scam. Scam is going to be a different scenario. When you're talking about someone scamming, they are using the tool in a way that is illegal and inappropriate. So naturally, the maker of that AI tool would argue this was never the intent for which we created this tool. Now, if they have reasonable knowledge to know that it's being used in this way, by and large, there may be an argument for their negligence. That's on one scenario. On the other scenario is not involving scams at all. Say there is data, right? Private data, and a company is legitimately using this data, whether it's AI is vetting it, AI is using it for some organizational purpose. And they have not put that organization that's using it, say, let's just make up a hospital. Hospital is using AI to now gather their patient data. And they have not protected it in a way where now it's susceptible for exploitation. Well, that healthcare company would likely be liable for negligence or some version of that because they did not put the right guardrails in place. So, what I'm saying is just because there's not federal law necessarily around some of these topics involving the use of AI doesn't mean that there's not a legal responsibility and money that will be paid out for a lack of a corporation or person using the tools in a way that ultimately trick the consumer.
Got it. Okay. Now, Ashley, what's one thing that we should have talked about that we have not talked about so far?
Well, we talked about ways to protect yourself, which I think that's the most important. We've talked about the human accountability piece. And then I think a lot of it is just to, make sure that we're having these conversations with more than just ourselves and our computer, right? So, don't think because, you're a teenager who may be rolling their eyes and knows it all. Make sure they're aware. Make sure that you're telling your parents, make sure you're telling your friends, people that are in decision-making positions, do something. I think that's part of it, is that sometimes we're always just waiting around for someone else to come save us when we're the ones that can save ourselves.
Okay. Well, great information, great advice there, Ashley. I have one last question for you. And this last question for you, Ashley, is what does peace of mind mean to you?
Peace of mind for me means that I am engaging in purposeful work that will leave the world a little bit better than how I found it. That's peace for me.
Well, very well said. There you have it. Ashley sharing her expertise. Now, Ashley, people want to learn kind of more about you. How can they do so?
On LinkedIn, I'm Ashley Upkins, Upkins. Also, if you want to know about the National Bar, the website is nationalbar.org. We'll have our convention in Nashville, Tennessee, my hometown, our first time here since 1950, in about a week and a half. So about 10 days to be exact. So really excited.
Awesome. Well, Ashley, this was great. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing your knowledge, and thanks for sharing your message.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thanks for listening to the Verdict Signal podcast. Any questions? Please contact the practice directly with the contact information provided during the show. We'll see you again next time. Bye for now.